Hi everyone. I'm here with Silver Morris, the winner of the January 2022 contest Dire Days. Welcome, Silver. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's so great to have you here talking to us today. I'm pretty sure everybody's going to want to know kind of the inspiration behind your crazy story. But first, what's going on in your mind as we start this chat?
I'm nervous and I feel like I shouldn't be. I'm already here.
Yeah, no
Yeah,
reason to be nervous. Congratulations again on winning. I obviously personally loved your story.
thank you.
Yeah, so thank you very much for that. Um, I wanted to know what's the inspiration behind spare parts?
So, right, like a few days before 2020, I was on a cruise with my family, and my mom told me some book I think she'd read where, from the perspective of kids who were raised just to be, parts, organs for their important siblings, their parents. And I took that and I just ran with it because I thought it would be a really interesting perspective to take in a story. And so I looked into it, and it is like a thing that happens more commonly in like savior siblings where it's more of a stem cell thing, but like I thought it'd be
This is
pretty
and
spooky.
that's a real phenomenon that's currently happening in the world.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
terrifying.
it's not a big thing, and but it's still a really scary thing to think that your only purpose is to kind of replace someone else. So that's what I went with. That's where this story idea came from,
I
because
was
I
not
took that
expecting you
idea
to
to
say
heart
this came from from a place
from a
like
real
from a
place.
real
Yeah.
place. No, not at all.
But
Yikes.
yeah, so
Um,
I that stuck with me.
what made you like put it in the setting of this sort of fantasy royal palace?
I just figured that when I thought of it, I thought of kind of a stone cold dystopian view on the value of a human life, and just being the sum of our parts and not anything more. And so I thought the idea even fit with like this kind of neon dystopian city kind of vibe.
Yeah, I noticed there were some sort of very fantastical elements, very subtly slipped in there. Like I think that you had a phrase that was the sky black furniture, something like that, like implying that the sky, we'd say sky blue, sky black makes me think that, you know, so was that on purpose, of course, kind of creating these
Yeah, it's a
fantastic
bright
elements.
place, it's a dark place, it's everything in between. It's anything you want it to be, unless you're spare parts. So
Do you have any like broader sense of this world in your imagination? Yeah, I made some comments in my judge's comments about, is this just for royalty, or is there back alley dealings? Does everybody have a spare? Do you have any of that sort of conceptualized in your head?
So in my mind, I was viewing it more as it was kind of a luxury to have actual human parts as a replacement. And this was like the future queen and had the luxury of actually having a real sibling to take pieces from. And that most people, if anything, that it would be more robotic parts. And
Okay.
this was a very isolated thing going on. So it's not like this widespread movement of people having kids just for their parts. I mean, that would be difficult and expensive, but it would also be like the look, I have a real arm again, even though you did see it get completely torn off, and here are the stitches to prove it's not mine. So it's more of a luxury thing in the tower.
Do you have any? Is this in any way part of a larger work? Was this just made specifically for the short story?
No, I just saw that. I saw girl on her way to her death, and not really knowing how to handle it, because she is frightened, but she wants to be dignified in her last moments, and so she's not really sure how to cope with it. And I thought that I really just came up with that moment and thought that was the story I wanted to tell, was just that mini voyage in the same building, but it's really, really far away.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I agree with you. I personally, it made me think, could I handle a situation like that? And the answer is no. I wouldn't handle it with the poise and grace that she did. I mean, she made jokes, she was scared, but she still went to it willingly. She didn't claw at the doors. They didn't have to drag her in. And I think that I don't know how many of us could really say that they would do the same.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you have any plans? I mean, so you said that you only wrote this just as a short story, but now that it's there and now that it's won the competition, do you have any plans to maybe expand it into a longer work or make it more detailed?
I mean, I might go back and add some more things to it, but I really just wanted to encompass the feeling of that moment of the uncertainty of something bad is going to happen to me, and I don't know what it is or to what severity it is, and then just have it be the worst outcome possible. But I don't. There's not really anything else I want to tell on that line, so I don't think it's going to get much more. Really, I think that's kind of it.
Right. And what about this world in itself? Like, Spare is obviously done now,
Mhm.
herself, but is there any plans to tell other stories that might take place in this sort of cool neon but dark, futuristic but fantasy world you've
I mean,
hinted at here?
possibly, but a lot of my dystopian ideas are kind of after all of that, a sort of rebuilding, a place of worldly rebuilding. So I don't think I would necessarily often visit this world again, although I might pull it for a future project.
It'll always be there for you, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Great. I want to know a little bit more about you. Sort of tell us about yourself, your maybe a bit of your writing history or where you are. And
Okay, so I am a senior in high school right now, and I've basically been writing for all of my life. I've been writing since very early elementary school because I read a lot. And so I was constantly coming up with these story ideas, and they would live in my mind. And I was happy with that until I forgot them. And then I knew that I really loved all of these ideas, but then they were gone. And it just made me really sad to not know why I missed them. So I started writing them out. And not too long ago, I actually found or my mom found, and she gave it to me. These pieces of paper where I hand wrote a story, and it was really bad. And I have no idea when I wrote it. Like looking at it, I'm like, I need to carbon date this paper or something because it has like words that I didn't think I would know when I was really little, but I didn't know how to use commas, and it was just really funny. But
you
then
pin this
more
up on your
concrete,
fridge now to remind you of where
it is in my
where
drawer
you
right here. And
That's
I'm not going
awesome.
to look for it right now, but it's really funny looking back and being like, oh, yeah, this was a really long time ago. And I still had it in me. That was hilarious. So for certain like concrete dates, I know that I've been writing since 2013 and 2014 because I actually found those Word documents on my dad's old laptop, which, took forever to boot up and weren't good because I was like 9 or something. But they were surprisingly long. Like I didn't think I'd have the patience, but I've been writing for a very long time. And yeah, so I started writing in elementary school. I kind of gave up on it, honestly, more around middle school. But then the summer before my freshman year of high school, I took a creative writing class over the summer, and that actually really kickstarted me into writing. Like I brought my iPad to school every day and a Bluetooth keyboard to type on it in the mornings before school because our bus got there like way too early. So it's like I have all this free time I don't know what to do with, and so just sitting there, I can actually make something of it. So I've been writing since freshman year in like this very big block of time.
And is that sort of, when you started taking it a little bit more seriously? Because, well, tell me, have
Mhm.
you, you've won this competition now, and I know that we've published your work in a couple of the previous issues of our magazine. So we're obviously for new writers, but have you been submitting work to magazines? Have you been working on novels or anything like that? Like you're taking it seriously now, or is this sort of the very beginning?
This is sort of the very beginning. This is actually the first magazine that I've submitted to. I submitted an entry to a book that actually came out in January, the 81 word flash fiction anthology. That was a long time ago, so I don't necessarily take credit for that. It wasn't very good, but yeah, this is really just the start of me being more serious.
Well, I mean, I'm glad that you are, because I know that we've got several pretty wonderful stories out of you, and one of them has won the contest, which means it's, I love it, and I think it's very impactful. So what, do you have any plans kind of going on from now? Because I mean, now you're not eligible to submit stories to us anymore. You're not a
Mhm.
new writer. You've won money with your with your work. So
Yeah,
what's
I've
the next step for
established
you?
myself. Yeah, I mean, there are so many contests out there if you go looking for them. It's just like if you want something to do, you can find it and just fill out these very daunting lists of there's so many things I can write for. So doing some of those, but I am in the planning stages of a novel right now, and have a lot of ideas that I would like to in the future have as full-blown novels. I think that would be really cool.
That's great. So you're going to sort of focus now on writing novels and on doing longer works?
Yeah, definitely focusing more on longer works.
Yeah, I mean, typically people don't really aspire to write short stories forever as a career. You want to do.
I mean, I always saw it as kind of a starting step, because it's like, it's not as much of a time investment as the whole book. And so it's like, I can really, it's good for practice. So even when I was like starting in high school, I knew like, I'm going to try some shorter things first as practice, because trying to go write a full novel right off the bat, it's really self-defeating to be like, this just isn't working. It's because you need all of that practice. So you're going to get you can get really easily and efficiently through writing a bunch of short stories.
And I mean, now you have the practice and the experience of writing short stories and having, hopefully the motivation of having them published, confidence boosts and things like that.
That was nice.
Yeah, definitely. So tell me a little bit about how do you go about generating your ideas? I mean, do you have any sort of process for it?
They fall out of the sky. I have a Google Doc on my phone that I just pull out and type stuff down when I'm just in the course of, living my everyday life. I'm narrating stuff. I think, what if this was a little bit different? Or I see some story element in a piece of media, and I'm like, what if this was different? Or I thought it was going to be this and it's actually this. Like reading the summaries on shows and movies and actually seeing it and being like, oh, that's totally not what I thought it was going to be at all. I thought my idea was actually going to be better. And it's like that's a valid source of ideas too. But I feel like honestly that they just come from everywhere. It's like this list just gets longer because it's so much easier to come up with a new idea than to write out a whole story.
Than to actually write one of the ideas that you have.
It's like one day I'll have so many stories because I can just keep adding ideas.
At least if they ever run out, you'll have a huge list that you'll have to work through anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they probably never run out of ideas. Are there any challenges that you find when you're trying to find out ideas or decide which ideas to write about?
Yeah. So in trying to turn ideas into like a full story, it can be like, I wrote down this one thing, but I'm really invested in wanting to get this idea out there, but I don't know the context to which this idea could be accessed in a story. And so then you generate things around that. And sometimes it's difficult to do. Usually it's not, but that if the idea stage has a problem in it, it's going to be like, I'm not seeing a good way to turn this into a whole thing. Like I want this sort of character, but I don't know in what context they would exist. But usually that's not too hard.
Yeah, right on. How do you go about like plotting your stories? And specifically, I guess I'm talking about the short stories that we've published and Spare Parts was just one. Your ideas follow the sky and hit you like a ton of bricks, but then how do you go about actually setting it up into a story? Because this idea of Spare kind of going on this journey, like you said, in the same building, but it's a very long journey, and sort of how she struggles with accepting her fate. How do you settle on that? And then how did you plan it out?
So with Spare Parts specifically, I knew where I wanted to start and I knew where I wanted to end. And that's like, okay, so the string that connects them. And usually it's just, I want to start off with characters that I know and that I know will do interesting things. And then they will take themselves places. And so with like my other and some of my other stories, even some of my other entries, is I know where I want to start. I don't know where I'm going or how they're going to get there, but I know that they're going to do things because they want things themselves. They're conflicting and, they can go out into the world and act on it. But with Spare Parts, I knew where it was going to end up. That was part of the idea. It was a very central part of the idea.
You really took the theme of dire days and when as dire as you can get.
Well, see, because I actually wrote this story before the contest because I had this idea a while ago. And so I didn't wait too long before writing it out. And then I revisited it for this contest because I was like, what would actually be a really good dire situation? This sort of an inevitable tragedy here. And so I went back to it and I redid it. I cleaned it up. So it isn't like, 2019 writing, but it is that same sort of idea. So yeah, development, I knew where I started, I knew where I ended, and I had characters who knew how to get there.
So your stories are usually very character driven. You're saying that they sort of guide the ship.
Yeah.
So how do you go about making a character that is sort of fully fleshed out enough that they can drive the boat for you?
I feel like I'm not giving very many answers. It just happens, because really it is just kind of like, all right, I'm, making a character, and here are some things that I know they would do, because it feels like knowing a person. Like, I actually, like, how would you describe a friend, or what would you think your friend would do in the situation? It's just like, I came up with this person. They're in my head.
So you don't actually, would you ever take a sort of a friend that you actually have and translate them into a character, or do you kind of come up with these other people?
I mean, occasionally parts, but I've never found myself writing a character and been like, yeah, I know that this is just, I'm putting myself on the page, or I'm putting whoever on the page. And like, I don't like using names of people I know, because it's like, I don't want them to think that this is my impression of them, because it's not. It's really just like, if someone has an interesting quirk, and I'm like, that would be an interesting thing to put in fiction. And then it might float to mind when I'm writing something. I'm like, great, we can put that in there. But usually, no, it's just, they're completely made up. They're all in here.
Right on. Tell me a little bit about your writing process. Like, do you go to a coffee shop, or are you writing where you're sitting right now? Or
yeah.
You mentioned at school with an iPad and a keyboard.
Yeah. So I do have an iPad and a Bluetooth keyboard, and I take that to school, or, sometimes if I'm going out, which hasn't happened a lot lately, for various reasons. I think there's a pandemic coming out. You might hear about it on the news. But most of my writing does have, like, big efficient writing happens at this desk, and I just sit down and I hammered out. It's a big chunk of time, a big chunk of words, and then I'm done. So this is really my efficient place right here.
Yeah, it's great. Do you ever sort of like, well, do your what are your pets behind you?
I have 3 rats behind me.
Rats. Do they distract you at all while you're writing, or?
No, actually, usually I put on some music and get in the zone. They're not usually loud. If they're loud, I like turn around and tell them to be quiet. lovingly, because they're my friends. But no, they don't make a lot of noise. They're great.
Awesome. Do you have anything that you can tell us about your editing process? Because I'm sure people will want to know if you do anything special, or how you approach it.
So editing has always been a tricky place for me, because I've always tried to say exactly what I mean in the lines as I write them, which isn't like a healthy practice. I'm trying to get myself out of that. And so I've been doing a lot more of that lately, and just letting the words.
What do you mean it's not a healthy practice, just saying what you mean?
No, I mean, like, editing as you write, because then it's really slow and you don't really have the momentum. Because then every time you press a period, you're trying to think, all right, now what do I want to say, and exactly how do I want to word it? And sometimes exactly how you want to word it doesn't matter until you actually have the words down and you have a story to edit, because then it's easier to edit words than a blank piece of paper, all that. So editing while writing, I did that with this, and I'm pulling myself away from that. So most of my editing is in word choice or just sentence flow stuff.
You find that your stories it takes you longer, it's a bit slow process to actually write them, but when you finish them, you don't have to do too much editing, because you really kind of done that the whole time?
Yeah. So I've always found that, actually sitting down and writing the thing takes forever, because I try to edit and write at the same time. And then, the editing process afterward is great, because it's like already mostly done. It's just like, oh, I wrote this at 3 a.m. So this word could be a different word. I think this would flow a little bit better. But with actually my most recent contest entry, the one for February, I was like, just going to write. I'm not going to stop. I'm going to hit keys until I am done, and then I'll look back at it and see if anything needs changing. And I was actually really happy with it. I didn't think very much needed changing even doing that. So well, I mean, that's my editing process.
You're definitely going to want to pull yourself away from that as you move into writing your novels. Because I mean, it works okay with short stories that are 2,000 words and less, but when you're getting up to 90,000 words, Well, how
And then you
long
need to
does
start
it how long does it
planning.
take you to, you said it's a slow process, but how long really does it take you to write sort of the 2,000 words that were the short stories that you submitted to Elegant Literature?
So my scope of time is all messed up because you get in the zone. But I was timing myself with this last short story, and so I think all in all, it took me about 4 hours. And this was the don't stop writing, and then we're going to fix it up later. Usually, it takes around like kind of a solid day's worth of writing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, your stories turned out quite well, obviously. So that's great. Tell us about the newer projects that you're working on. You said you were sort of having planned out a couple different novels. Do you want to tell us about one of those projects,
Okay.
or which one's your favorite? What you're working on right now?
All right. So what I'm working on right now might be helpful to preface with the fact that I'm taking an AP psychology or a college level psychology course simply to help me write better. Like that was my motivation going. And I'm like, psychology is kind of interesting, but I think it would really help me in writing people if I could learn about psychology. And so right now we're actually going into clinical psychology, and that's all of your diagnoses. I should have said that right the first time. That's what we're learning. But
you're in class for it.
Yeah. But so I'm incorporating schizophrenia very strongly into this work because I'm writing a novel where a boy who comes back from the dead deludes himself into believing that he's a zombie and that he wants to eat his next door neighbor, and that he's being hunted down by a zombie hunting priest, and that his own feelings are getting in the way. And I feel like it's going to be a jolly old time, even though it's talking about a really heavy hitting mental disorder. Schizophrenia is really scary, but I'm really taking a shine into this idea.
I mean, it certainly sounds like a fresh take on the zombie genre. I don't think I've heard of somebody who thinks they're
The
a
zombie
zombie,
genre
but
that's not actually a zombie.
yeah, they're not. He's not a zombie, right? Like he just thinks
he's
he
not.
is.
He just hit his head a little hard when he got hit by a car. So he's not actually a zombie. That's a delusion, and a lot of the symptoms of schizophrenia actually line up with what I figure someone believing themselves to be a zombie, not actually being a zombie, would have. And I think I'm gonna have fun with this one.
Yeah, I mean that sounds really interesting. Do you have any plans to maybe interview people with schizophrenia or research that to a greater extent than a single college course? Because I mean
Of
it's
course, I'm
obviously a
not
very
getting all the
sensitive
info
topic
from.
for people, right? So you want
Yeah.
to get it right.
My mom is an occupational therapist, so while that's not like I sit you on a couch and we go over a mental illnesses together, she does have like the DSM-5 on her computer. She did work with schizophrenic patients.
What's the DSM-5 for anybody that might not be familiar with it?
So that is basically the big old book of how we make sure we're diagnosing people in different areas the same way. It sets the standard for what exactly defines a mental illness, what the symptoms of a mental illness are, and what the treatments for that illness can be. And so it's the 5th edition currently. Initially, it was like the very first version was just written in context of soldiers coming back from war. So that wasn't exactly applicable to all people, but now it's on the 5th version, and it's actually come a pretty long way. So I looked over that, and I've talked to my mom about exactly what like a schizophrenic person would do, or perspective is like. And yeah, I'm definitely researching this because I would hate to do it wrong. Not only because I think that would offend people, but it would look stupid. And in the end, to be like, look, this kid has schizophrenia in my book, and he doesn't. He just has
Something
weird.
else. Yeah.
Weird. He's just weird.
Yeah. But I mean,
So I'm definitely taking the research precautions with this one.
that's great. But I mean, doing it that way and doing it right, I think it sounds like it could be a very impactful story too, depending, because you want to do it justice, I would imagine. So it sounds like it's going to be very interesting, and I look forward to reading it.
I look forward to writing it.
How far along are you? Just the idea?
So I basically have most of the plot filled in. I mean, middle points, and I'm writing it all down. But I do have like a whole arc set and characters and everything. So it's just I'm going to finish up with planning, and because this is a novel, got to gotta actually plan before you just start hitting
Yeah.
keys. And then I'm going to start hitting keys after I have that done.
What's the name of it? Do you have a name yet, or a working title anyway?
That's actually how this idea came to me. I was minding my own business. The title Dead Love popped into my mind. I'm like, oh, that sounds pretty cool. I bet I heard that somewhere before. And I looked it up, and it's the name of a book and a band. And the band was more popular than the book. So that's how I knew it was basically free real estate to take, because things have multiple names. But if you're trying to write, your book Harry Potter about some lawyer or something, it's not going to get found. So I wanted to make sure it's, not a thing that already exists, it's a really popular thing that already exists. And from what I found, it isn't. And so the idea completely stemmed from that title. It and the plot just hit me at the same time. And so, I mean, the title's always willing to change it. Finding out what to call my story is one of the things I have the most difficulties with. That's the hard part. But that's how it came to me. That's that's what's called currently.
Well, that's great. So I have another question for you. It's sort of different from what we were talking about in your work and things. But if you bought a useful product that's sort of less than $100 that really made an impact on your life in the last 6 months or so? This could be writing related, would probably be the most helpful to anybody watching this, but it could be anything really that, that you can think of.
I mean, elegant literature, that was helpful.
That's under $100, and I guess that's certainly been the most useful for you.
But my iPad, my keyboard, the case which came with the keyboard, it's nifty. But those were all gifts. So actually, and my computer was a Christmas present from like 5th grade. So it's really old. I haven't bought myself anything.
I think actually elegant literature is a good answer for you, because I mean, you're saying it's the first place you've actually submitted. You got your stuff. You've got a bunch of stories published.
Yeah, it was a really great investment. I do say so.
Paid off. Tell me more about writing on an iPad with so you don't like using just the keyboard that comes on the screen with it. You actually have an external keyboard.
Yeah, I actually have an external keyboard. So I could make that back here. So it used to just be like this really thin case, and I had a keyboard separate from that, but now I have this. So it looks like a book, and it's magnetic. Got the iPad, and then you have this keyboard, which is really thin, and it comes out like, look how
it comes off.
Yeah, and it comes off. So you like shift it down on the case, and you can stand up the iPad. And so I write on that as like a laptop.
And could you just stand up the iPad like further away if you wanted to, or put it up on a stand and still have the keyboard down at a different level?
Oh yeah, it's a Bluetooth keyboard, so it doesn't actually connect to the case.
How much of your writing do you do on that?
I do like the bits and pieces on it. Like I'm at school or on the bus and I have some downtime, and I find myself doing mostly editing on that. And then at my desk here, I do a lot of the original drafts.
Mm-hmm. How do you sync up your work between it?
I write on Google Docs, so it all syncs up. I mean, sometimes I start my computer and it's like, oh, I need to connect my iPad to the Wi-Fi before it pops up on my computer, but then it does. So Google Docs is really wonderful.
It's super convenient for writing cross platforms.
It's a godsend.
Yeah. If I were to, here's another question for you, one of the harder ones. If I were to send you just a year into the future, where would you be? What's sort of like the best outcome for you in your writing life or in your life in general?
In a year, I'll be almost done with my first year of college. So I've never been to college before, believe it or not. So it'd be nice if, that all worked out and I found something that worked. But I mean, it would be nice to have an anthology of like my shorter works. And I think that's a much more manageable publication before like a full novel, which is, a work in progress too. But I have a bunch of short stories already. And I can just
How many short stories do you have? Because I think we've published, this would be the third one, I think. So how many beyond that do you have? Of a level that you think you could sort of edit in and spin into an anthology.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, every time I finish a story, the last one doesn't seem as good anymore because I'm improving, so it's good. But then I got to go back and like edit them. So really, how many do I think are good enough for the anthology right now? Not many of them. But I just gotta go back and fix some things, and then it'll be up to my new and improved standards.
Great. So you mentioned you're going to college, university. What are you planning on taking there?
I'm majoring in forensic investigative sciences because I like chemistry. I like some crime stuff. I think it'd be fun. And I'm specifically going to a big school because I want to be able to take like a wide variety of classes. So whether I can, fit in some music theory and production or acting or writing in there, along with all of my core classes, because if I do well enough on my AP test this year, I can basically skip over my first year of college, so I could just cram in all of those fun classes. That's my plan for college.
Wow. So is that so? Are you going to be like a forensic investigator? Is that just out of interest? Are you planning on writing crime stories, or?
So I find myself continually coming back to writing because I'm, taking a criminal investigations class this year, which I took to write crime, and I'm taking psychology to write characters, and I'm like even learning forensic investigative sciences. That would be fun to help write crime, and I think it'd be a cool thing to do after college. Even if I don't do it after college, I think it'd be a good thing to know after college because it's very science based.
Yeah. You mentioned that you might take some music courses, and I see maybe a guitar behind you and a keyboard. So are you very musical as well?
In the closet.
A cello in the closet.
There's a cello in the closet and like an actual big piano downstairs.
All right, so are you quite musical? Is it just for show, or?
I would like to. I don't know how to play the guitar. One day I was like, I would really like to know how to play the guitar. My mom was like, I have a guitar in the closet back from my mom used to sing anti-war protests to the kids at daycare. And I was like, I didn't know any of those things. That just completely came out of left field. I'm like, didn't know you had the guitar. I didn't know your mom worked at a daycare. So now I have the guitar in my room. It's like, I'll pick it up and play it one day. But piano is the thing I've been doing for a long time. I also take voice lessons. That's why I have this microphone. But I mean, yeah, I'd like to be very musical.
Do you have any designs on a musical career at all? Are you in a band, or are you working on any songs, or do you write songs as well? Do you write music?
Yeah, so I've composed some things. Most of what I do on here is mess around, and most of what I do on the big piano downstairs, the legit grand piano, is more classical music. But I think it'd be fun to do kind of alternate rock / electric type music composition. I need to find the software for it.
Yeah. And would you be mostly doing solo, or do you try and get in a group with that kind of thing?
It'd be nice to do with that. I haven't found anybody. So music is like my solo thing right now.
I mean, you're obviously very creative. If you're doing fiction writing, you're working on, composing music, and then you also enjoy science, psychology, forensic investigation.
I got quite drawings in this cabinet right here, and it's everything.
It's quite a broad.
I got drawings in this. I got a painting up there. The only thing I don't do is sculpture.
Take some pottery classes and chisel stones. I mean, that's very cool. You're obviously having a very interesting sort of array of hobbies, and I mean, some of them are more than hobbies, obviously. So it's, I'm very interested to see what you do with your career and sort of which direction you end up going. But you plan on
you and me both. I have no idea where I'm headed. I'm like, big college, I can change my mind because I don't know what I'm doing.
You certainly have like your surface area spread out. Do you plan on?
I do, and there's a whole desk that you don't even see.
Do you plan on continuing writing? I mean, even if you if you publish some books, but you don't get sort of make a career out of it. Well, are you planning on aiming for a career in writing, or are you going for criminal investigating, or what would be your preferred sort of career path right now if you just could leap forward 5 years and have your pick?
So my preferred career path would be being a detective. And yet you got to go to police academy to be a detective. And I'm not built to be a cop. So I'm like, next best thing we can do behind the scenes and like do drug analysis or something. Like,
what about private investigation?
Yeah, private investigation. I think that would be cool. It's just there's a it would be fun. But there's a lot I have to work with, and so I don't want to change my mind. I want to find something that I won't change my mind from, and that was always my really big deal. Like not even that long ago was I want to find, because with college it's a big commitment. Because I'm going to this one school and they have these options, and it's really important. Just if you think of like a butterfly effect thing, it's like my parents met at college. If they didn't, they really shouldn't have. I mean, my dad wasn't even thinking of, they met at Caltech, which is very impressive. But like my dad wasn't even thinking of going to Caltech until it was recommended to him. And then he wasn't even thinking of doing it, but he was doing like the tour for the person who recommended for their sake. And then he did it. So it's like, things matter. And then it's kind of that decision paralysis.
You never know what moments are going to change things in the future.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know what you mean. I used to do a lot of sort of world traveling, and when I started backpacking around, I would have these plans like 2 years in advance that I was going to do this, and I was going to go there, and I was going to go here. And every time wherever I went, I would always end up changing plans and taking advantage of different opportunities, or meeting people and then going with them somewhere totally different. And so I completely stopped planning more than like a month or two in the future for traveling. And even now, if I go on a trip or something, I do the bare minimum of research and I get there and just see what happens. And so I understand completely what you mean when there's going to be moments that change the trajectory and you don't know what they are. The best you can do is kind of follow your passions in a way that makes sense. So it sounds like you're pretty set on criminal, like the forensic investigation for now, and then seeing what happens as you go through that path.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, fantastic. I mean, that's all the questions that I have for you today. Did you want to add anything else or talk about anything else before we finish with our call?
I don't think so. I mean, I think everyone who's going to be watching this call is already going to be writers, and obviously they're trying very hard because they're entering this competition. And I think that's really the best course of action is like, don't give up. Because I mean, I started in elementary school. So like if I was like, wow, this story was really bad, which of course I was like, wow, this story is really bad because I read actual books and I did not have actual books that I was churning out. So if I was like, wow, this is really bad. I mean, I did stop at one point. And if I didn't come back, because I mean, writing means a lot to me now, and it has meant a lot to me for the past 4 years. And so if I never came back to it, I don't really know where I'd be, because it's very central to me now. So don't give up. Just don't.
I think that's fantastic advice. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining me and having this conversation, and congratulations again on winning the contest.
Yeah, thanks.